flabbergasted as to how I ended up in this situation. You know, parts of me knew, but I was not putting things together. There was an opportunity for a do-over there. But instead I took another detour. Got on the phone again. Hey, if I pay you back, can you shoot me some money? Because I think I need to get back to Kansas. So I got a little money and got back to Kansas, and I decided, well, something has to change. And I got to get some money going. So I got a job running a bar. By the way, my experience running a bar was nil, but again, I'm really good in the interview, and at that point in my life I had no qualms lying, so I got in. Started doing that job, and quite honestly, for the persona that I had created, the guy who was funny smart, you know, just enough to keep the conversation going, but always being funny so I could keep you at a distance so I didn't have to engage you and you didn't have to engage me. That was a great career choice for the persona that I created, because my job was to keep the party going all the time, keep people spending money. No problem. The downside was it still gave no place for the guy who I really knew who I was inside to live, to be. It basically felt like maintaining two separate personalities, and this guy on the inside was still drowning underwater with no place to come up for air. I thought I had hit the bottom in Arlington. When I really hit the bottom was when I was back in Kansas running the bar. Particularly one night we were driving around after work. Two of the guys from the bar were driving around in a truck. We've been drinking too much. We're passing a joint back and forth. We pull up to a stoplight there in Pittsburgh, and this police car pulls up right behind us, and the lights pop on. Some of you at a certain age or background are going to recognize this next move that I do. It's the duck and dive. It's where you take everything that's in your car and you shove it under the seat simultaneously. You pop back up like a Three Stooges movie, which is funny and stupid. And you go, and I just had what my friends in 12-step programs call a moment of clarity. A moment of clarity. And my moment of clarity sounded like this in my own head. Now you've finally got everything you've been working for. You've now thrown away every opportunity, every break, every distinctive that you've ever had in your life, because congratulations, genius, now you've just become one other garden variety screw-up. Like everybody else you grew up with. You've been so determined to not be who you are, but to express your resentment by pushing everyone and everything else away and zigging when everybody else said zag. Congratulations. Your plan has come now to fruition, and now you've gotten everything that you had hoped for. Now, that seemed like a really long conversation in my head. It probably happened in about that amount of time. Because the police car then pulled around us and took off really fast down the street. Apparently it was taking off to respond to some other call in some other part of the city. But I do remember sitting there in the truck, still hadn't moved off the stoplight, and I had a very clear realization, and that was this. That's the last bullet you get to dodge. That's the last break you're going to catch. If you keep going down this path, it's going to be over for you. Now, some people's bottom looks a lot different, but for me, that was mine. And that's the first time that I decided to seriously take a do-over. And that do-over for me came in the form of, in my case, a person. I had met Jody, who was my wife, who was then just somebody I had met not too long before. And obviously there was something good about this person. And I say this in all seriousness, I still tease her about it, that the only time I've ever questioned her judgment was when hanging around with me in the first place. luckily for me, and maybe not so luckily for her, she was hanging around with me, and she was getting ready to go to Kansas City and start a new job. So I picked up the phone and made 2 phone calls. First, I said, hey, what do you think about if I follow you up to Kansas City? Because I got to get out of where I am. And the second phone call was to my boss saying, hey, I'm done. You need to find somebody else to run this place. Now, I didn't know that was the beginning of a do-over, but for me, that was the beginning of a do-over. I followed her up to Kansas City and got a job working retail in a music store. In my mind, it was going to be a short-term thing until I got a real job. Well, that turned into a 6.5-year career that actually got us over here, but that's another story for another day. During the time we were in Kansas City, I was trying to do anything I could that was the opposite of what had gotten me to the point that I was at. And one of the things that Jody suggested was maybe we should go to church. Yeah, church, why not? I'll try it. I mean, there's nothing inherently wrong with church, except that the people in it are deluded and dumb. But sure, why not? Try anything different now. I'm just trying to find something that works. So we went to this little church and went to one service, and I don't mean to be demeaning, but this is the way I remember the message. Do good, be nice. Do good, be nice. Hey, I can get behind that plan. Sounds like a good plan, right? So I thought, cool, this is church, right? Nobody takes this serious, but do good, be nice, sure. Sounds like a good plan, let's go with it. Well, we got back to my apartment on Rose Hill in Lenexa, and we're eating lunch, and Jody started to suggest that there might be something more to this Christianity stuff than besides just do good, be nice. She had been raised in church and had been away from it for a while, but was trying to get back, and she started talking to me about this stuff, about a personal God, and the fact that God might be interested in your life, and blah-de-blah-de-blah, yip, 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 and I was like, I got really angry. Not because the ideas she was floating out, but because, hey, I just stepped out and I tried something different. I took a risk here. And now you're telling me there might be more to it? This does not reinforce my risk-taking desire. So I pointed out the sliding glass windows of my second-floor apartment at this building that was catty-corner across the street. It had a cross on it. That's all I knew. Could have been an Elks Lodge. Could have been a bingo hall. Didn't know, didn't care, because I was just making a point to win an argument. And I said, fine, next week we'll go over there. She said, okay. Well, next week we did go over there. A little place called Central Church of the Nazarene, which is an important place in my life because it's the first place that I met guys who were like me. Guys who came from questionable backgrounds. Guys who had made really bad decisions. Guys who preferred detours to do-overs. And yet, there was something about their lives that was different than mine in that they had parts of their lives that were working, that were producing positive results. And I'm not talking about in the perfect child way. I'm not talking about in the Tony Robbins Awake Your Inner Giant way. I just meant that these were normal guys, and somehow embracing this faith and following some of the tenets was bringing about positive results in their life. That was intriguing. That was something I hadn't explored before, so I thought I'll check that out. Unexpectedly, I also found another thing. The pastor there was a guy named Lee McCleary. He's a wonderful, wonderful guy. And from the stage, he would talk about things I did not expect him to talk about. I expected him to teach and to talk about the Bible, but what he spoke about often was his own life. Particularly his relationship with his father. He'd grown up with a very abusive alcoholic father. And his father, about the time that Lee was in his early teens, had undergone a major transformation. His father had met God, was the words that Lee would use, and went through a tremendous change. Now, being the cynical guy that I was, I expected to hear miracle stories.